Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the third edition of the Tiki Data Days by Sports Dynamics. My name is Stefano Bernabino. I'll be your host today. Before getting started on today's very exciting topic, just a quick reminder what the Tiki Data Days are all about. The Tiki Data Days are a series of digital and physical gatherings and discussions aiming to highlight the role of data in modern football for a coach, a journalist, and sporting director, or even a player, providing a presentation around a specific topic using data to help us better understand football. Tiki Data Days are an initiative of SportsDynamics, the known dynamic data and metrics startup founded in 2018 and providing clubs and staff members and analysts dynamic, automated, customizable data and metrics through SportsDynamics platform, better known as Gata. Well, before no further transition, I'm today very pleased to be joined by Marc Rochon, who leads video and data analysis of the Croatian Football Federation. After being runners-up in 2018, Croatia reached an excellent third place at the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar. And Marc, it's a great pleasure and honor to have you here to tell us more about this specific partnership that Sport Dynamics offered to Croatian National Federation on data and metrics World Cup partnership. And by the way, today's topic of Tiki Data Day number 3 will be all about this: how Croatia managed to a very successful World Cup thanks to this specific, not only this one, of course, but focusing on this specific partnership. Before we get started, Marc, can you tell us more about this specific partnership you guys run with Sports Dynamics at the World Cup in Qatar?
Yeah, sure. So we set out to find a suitable data partner that could work with us, that would provide us more in-depth analysis than you would normally get in your public domain, I guess you could say. So we were in contact with Sports Dynamics. We went through meetings, about 2.5 hours long, of everything that we could talk about under the sun in terms of how the Croatian Football Federation looks to play football, what our principles of play are, how we set everything up. And then we constructed from there a pretty good data set that they were supplying us throughout the World Cup. You know, the guys worked very hard for us. There wasn't an API feed, so they were staying up all hours of the night, downloading everything and uploading it into the servers. And yeah, it was a very comprehensive service that we received in the end, and we were very satisfied.
Thank you, Marc, and we'll be running in depth thanks to your presentation. Well, you know, the Tiki Data Days, our concept is to reproduce a football game. So I'm kind of the referee moderating the session. Marc, you'll be the captain, but we have the pleasure to have teammates. So some very prestigious guests. Here is our lineup right here. So we're welcoming from LA Galaxy, the assistant coach and director of video analysis, Sam Green. Hi, Sam.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
And from LA, we go to Hoffenheim to meet with Niklas Hurshagenhoff, who is the analyst of the Hoffenheim club. There you are. Hi, Niklas. How are you doing?
Good afternoon. I'm great. Thanks. Pleasure to be here.
And just joined from Southampton, Adam Ridgewell, the analyst operations lead. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thanks. Nice to meet you all.
And our lineup of team members, we also have Lovik Mandela-Son, who is the video analyst for Standard de Liège and assistant video analyst for the U21 Belgium national team. Hi, Lovik, how are you?
Hello, everyone. Very good. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I love your background. Is definitely better than mine today for this Tiki Data Days number 3. We move on from Belgium to Austria. We have Daniel Schmidt, analyst for Rapid Vienna. Hi, Daniel. How are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
And last but not least, to warm Corsica with Marius David, the video analyst at Ajaccio, AC Ajaccio. Hi, Marius. How are you?
Hi, I'm fine. Thanks to everybody for everybody to be here.
Well, we have definitely a dream team here, Marc, along you. You are the captain of this session. So, without no further transition, the floor is yours to take us through the Croatia journey at the World Cup 2022 and the Sports Dynamics partnership case study. The floor is yours, and I'll be happy to interact right after your presentation. Thanks.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. So I would begin to say, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be able to come out and speak about how we did in the World Cup and the experiences that we've had. If I can start by just setting a little bit of the scene. So what we were working with in Qatar, is one analyst on site, myself, one supporting intern back in the UK, one assistant coach / scout who's going around to all the matches, live scouting and reviewing everything, and one remote scout as well who's watching everything online and then feeding back information they've seen as well. Just so we're making sure that we have a broad depth of views without being excessively large in our staff as well. So through that, we're then covering onto the training analysis, pre-match, live, post-matches. I'm pretty sure every club out there is doing it at the moment. And we're breaking that down across our 4 days between games into 3 pre-match meetings, 1 post-match meeting, and a daily staff meeting, which happens regularly, either in the morning or the evening, depending on the timing of our days. Now, I've highlighted there that central to everything is our clear principles of play and an evidence-based approach. So through that, what I mean is all of our work is based on data or observations that we've made on the opposition or on our own performances where we can work on something specifically. So there's nothing that we're going out of our way just to go through the motions. Everything is entirely based on this is what we want to get the objective out of, this is why we're doing this, and this is how we plan to do it. So those 3 match meetings that I've highlighted there, they could work in different ways. So they could be 2 matches, 1 in possession, 1 out of possession, and then 1 set play meeting, or they could be 1 meeting on the opposition in and out, as well as a training video, which is then mixed in with what we've been working on as well on that previous meeting to that, then followed up by the set play meeting as well. So there's a variety of ways that we're working in terms of with the video as well. And again, everything's underpinned with data as we're going through it all. So our environment that we have, we're quite proud of this. As a small staff, we all fit onto 1 dinner table. So that's all of our technical staff, our sporting director, all the coaches, the fitness coaches, myself, the analysts. The players all share 1 table as well, so they have a single table. There's this environment of inclusion, of clear channels of communication. Everyone's able to speak to everyone else, and there's no sort of blocking of hierarchy or anything of that sort. It's all open, clear ways of working. So it's very, very, very easy for us to be able to pass a message on very quickly. It's very easy to be able to discuss something openly, and we have a lot of good conversations that develop through that then lead on to other things as well. So all of our data is then shared to the players and to the staff. That can then lead to further discussions over the dinner table. It could be in the meeting room, it could be anywhere. But because we have this togetherness, it's a real sort of strength of the Croatian national team. And that would be the one thing I would say that we've had over the last 5 years, and we've really built on that to make sure that we're doing the most we can with that process. So our togetherness is a real key strength of what the Croatian national team try to achieve in every tournament that we go into and in every match that we have. So if I move into specifically now what we were doing with SportsDynamics. So looking at our data support, I'll break this down into different sections, but looking at post-match, pre-match, and then we didn't have anything live at the World Cup because that wasn't something that we were able to work with in terms of our staffing structure as well. So on the post-match side of things here, we're looking at key things that were for us. So the first 2, I recognise that the writing's probably a little bit too small on the charts here now. But the first graphic there is looking at forward passing options from our own half. The second one is looking at passing options in the build-up phase from our own half as well. Just to highlight that they're things that as a possession-based team, we're very keen to build on our principles of keeping the ball, and therefore we need to have options on the ball to be able to move the ball efficiently to create the angles of approach to then be able to make penetrative passes forwards. which is the chart to your right side here. So you have penetrative passes successful on the left, and then the further to the right graphic is showing you missed penetrative passes, so unsuccessful penetrative passes that we've attempted. But you can clearly see there that matches our medal ranking in the end, that we've been consistently ranked third throughout those bits, where we were aiming to be as well in terms of our style of play and what we were trying to achieve. Now, these are ones that we specifically designed with SportsDynamics as well. So I sat down with them, as I said before, for 2.5 hours. We went through the process of what we were looking to achieve, what we wanted to see. And then they came back to me with the XML video options of examples of where they were highlighting, for example, penetrative passing. And then we were going through that saying, yes, I agree with this one. No, I don't agree with that. It allowed us to build up our own sort of unique picture of what a Croatian penetrative pass was compared to what it might be given to us by another company who said this is a forward pass, for example. So we had specific areas that we're looking at unique to our style of play. So if I highlight on the post-match here, as before I said that we were very good at building up the play. We had good options in the build-up phase for forward passing as well, for penetrative passing. The graphic to the right here, just under Andre Kramaric, you can see successful passes into the danger zone and missed passes into the danger zone. As you can see, we're third and fourth ranked for those. So we weren't missing our opportunity to try and play into that danger zone, and the danger zone being the area of sort of maximal opportunities to shoot and score. So that was something that we were very good at doing, as along with our build-up phase, as long as with our options on the ball. However, something that we could have looked at being better, and this is something that we arose during the tournament, was our space opened in the danger zone. This then led us into, okay, why are we not being so successful at that? Started to analyze the video, which this is linked to. So we were able to then go into the XML, go through the process of, right, okay, here's some areas that we can improve, some options that we can try and do better with. And then we were able to break that down further. So we then saw, okay, we were missing opportunities to shoot. We were actually the 5th highest per game at potential shots. So therefore, we had more opportunities to shoot than we were taking. So that was something else we started then to investigate into. Okay, we can create better opportunities by having more space created in the danger zone. We can also then look to make sure that we're maximizing our opportunities by taking shots when we're not turning them down. And then I started to break that down into who was the players that were doing that, which is the graphic at the bottom of the screen there. And on that, you can see in possession build up in the last tier, potential shots. We had a player that had 9 potential shots they turned down, which was actually the 2nd highest in the whole competition. So we then sat down with that player specifically and said, this is some examples here where you could have had a shot. Maybe if this arises again in the next game, can you please have a look at taking the shot on? Or talking to them and saying, why did you choose not to take the shot on? And understanding the principles of what we were doing at the time as well, and the situational variables that they were in those examples as well. So that's an example where the data was really important for us, that we were then able to sort of break down our performance and say, right, here's an area we can definitely improve on. I know it was highlighted in the press as well, but this is something that we were working on pretty early on in the tournament as well to try and improve. We were a lot lower ranked at the beginning of the tournament in terms of those. Other things that we highlighted on the post-match was fitness data as well, which I haven't put onto this slide here, but I'll just talk about it quickly. One thing that we always pride ourselves on is that we'll match the opposition in terms of our fitness levels, and we will never have a team that completely dominates us and overruns us. And that's something that's key to our principles of play as well. And it's something that has been used in this World Cup. We were able to say, okay, teams, for example, such as Canada, very, very physical team, very, very hard running team, very, very energetic. We knew going into that game, because of the data sets that we were going through, that we would have to then match their levels. And post-match, we were able to go through and say, right, actually, we matched everything. We've met them equal in terms of fitness data, and then our technical data was far higher for what we were hoping to achieve. So some examples of that there. So as I mentioned there, looking at the opposition, this is to the left here, the blue boxes. That's actually a slide that we presented. I've translated it back to English. It was in Croatian. But we present that to the players, and what we use there is basically setting the scene. So we're looking at a team and saying, okay, this is what you're going to face, guys. They're the second hardest for ground duels 1, so therefore you're going to expect a physical tussle. They're very good at winning fouls off you, so be aware of this. And we have some video examples to back up what we're showing there as well. And then areas like aerial duels, okay, the 9th were far higher. We were actually ranked first at that point, so we're saying, right, that might be an area that we can utilize. And then looking at spaces opened in the box, very similar to the one that I showed you before, where space opened in the danger zone, they were ranked second, this team. So just highlighting their strengths and setting the scene before we then went into the video and examined it further, if you like. Something that we highlighted in this was that we didn't think they were overly good at pressing. We didn't think they were overly high on sprints. And they were actually ranked beneath us, if you see on the graphic to the right there, on fast transitions. On average, they were having 1 less, I think it was, or 0.3 less maybe. There we go, 0.3 less on the fast transitions. However, as you go through the 15-minute periods, they have this period just before halftime between 30 and 45, where they're actually ranked 6th in the tournament. So something happens at that period in the game where they suddenly become very dangerous on the counter-attack. Lo and behold, in that particular match, as you can see with the timeline graphic underneath there, on the 34th and 39th minute, they scored 2 goals, largely down to being able to do a fast transition. So that was something else that we probably should have gone into more depth. We looked at the initial bits of they're not as they're the same as us in terms of fast transitions. They're not overly based on a fast transition team. However, if we'd gone into more depth, as we see here, then we might have said, okay, this last 15 minutes of the first half, we're going to have to be real sharp on that particular phase of play to make sure that we don't expose ourselves. Because at that particular time, we were really starting to step up. We were getting more and more into the game. We had more possession. And then obviously conceded the 2 goals, which completely deflated the match. So that was just to highlight there that how we set the scene with the data. And then if we had probably spent a bit more time going into more depth of the data, then we might have found this particular data point, which would have helped us and certainly be something that we'll be looking to make sure it doesn't happen ever again. So as I mentioned before as well, there's a correlation to the video. So here we have the XML, which comes with the data reports as well, something that we found to be excellent use for us. So whenever we were able to see, for example, on the screen there, successful passes into the danger zone by Brazil, everything was linked to the data set that we were seeing. So if they were excessively good at it, which in this case Brazil were very, very good at getting the ball into the danger zone, we were able to then go through very quickly what are the examples of that. Okay, let's pull them out. What do we want to show to the players? What's going to be relevant to our shape, to our principles of play? As well as being able to then say, okay, this is how that might translate into the training session, and then following on to that. On the left side of things as well, you have the pitch control. The pitch control map is something that we used more so in the group stages than the latter stages. And it was, again, just checking our control. In this particular example, this is us pressing onto Morocco. And it shows how we were looking to isolate the defensive midfielder to then be able to regain the ball. And that's a pretty good example of that occurrence there. And it's also something we were able to do in terms of our build-up play and build-up shape as well, to be able to check to see if we were having good dominance over the territorial positions, and then making sure that we were carrying on our principles through that. So that, I believe, I've run through that as good length. And I just want to say thank you very much, guys. That's a real sort of brief introduction. I haven't gone into anything in huge amounts of detail because I don't want to give away everything. We've got the Nations League coming up in June, and I'm sure I don't want to give away every secret of the Croatian national team just before that. But yeah, thank you very much, and I'd be happy to discuss anything further.
Yeah, no, thank you, Marc. That's very, very interesting. Before throwing the ball to the lineup of guests, I had just a little question to understand and to get a better insight. Is that you've been working for the Croatian national team since 2017, so it's been a long run, and you've experienced, of course, the World Cup in 2018. If you had to outline just some of the main differences from 2018 to 2022 in terms of approach with metrics and approach to the games, What would be the main differences that you could highlight from those two experiences there?
Yeah, for sure. In terms of the main difference in terms of data set, I think would be a big thing. So in Russia in 2018, we really didn't have that level of data. So we were working off forward pass completion. We were looking off pass completion. We didn't have the level of information that we had going into this World Cup, which is something I think was a real benefit for us. We were able to highlight teams very quickly and say, okay, this is for example, looking at the Japanese team that we played, a very, very good aggressive pressing team, and again, another very high energetic physical output team. So we were able to very quickly go through and say, look guys, these are probably one of the top teams in the World Cup. If I remember right, they were in the top 5 at that time for pressing events. Therefore, be aware that this is going to impact into our build-up shape and build-up play. So then we were able to work on something in training that was able to translate to the pitch. So being able to do things like that wasn't available to us in Russia, and it was certainly something that we took good advantage of, I think, working on in Qatar.
Excellent, thank you, Marc, for that. I throw it to our lineup of guests. Any reactions, questions, comments to this very interesting Marc's presentation from you guys?
I'll go first. I've got a question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
You with some of the metrics you you sort of had the sort of graph ranking you from 1 to 32. I wondered if there was did you use a threshold or anything like that? So if a certain KPI went over a certain amount or was always below a certain amount for a particular game, that would warrant feedback. How was that judged?
We didn't actually have any historical data to go on. So for those sort of events there, we were basing it off this tournament. So we could rank against the other members of the tournament. And, I could guess that certain teams were playing certain different styles compared to us. So if there was something that was high for them and low for us, I wasn't too concerned. But in terms of our principles, so for example, the one that I showed with the build-up options of passing options, that was something that was very key to our play. And if we were saying it was key to our play and we were very, very good at that, and actually the data showed we weren't, then yeah, we're for sure looking into those. As I said with the example of the shots, why weren't we getting certain shots off in certain areas? Because X, Y, and Z. So therefore, we were able to investigate further and then build out a solution for how we could try and rectify that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, good. Thank you.
No problem.
If I may.
Yeah, I want to, by the way, thank you, Adam, for that question. Just jumping on that, I think it's very interesting. And some of you have both the clubs, but also national team. And Adam, yourself, you work at FA from 2010 to 2012. Just a question, how is different the approach on data and analytics and metrics from a club perspective to a national team perspective? What is different? What is what makes the big difference?
I mean, I would say that the level I worked at with the national team was mostly the youth side, so it was very different. But my interpretation of that would be the scarcity of the data at the international level, and how you decide what's relevant. So it's difficult enough when you play 38 games as we do, sort of, is the data from the first game of the season relevant by the, say, 25th game? But if you're in international football, how do you decide whether some say it was their 5th last game, but their 5th last game could have been 6 months ago? Is that relevant? Are the players the same? Because with the national squad, only takes a couple of injuries and half the team could change. Whereas where the club side, the people they've got for that season will probably stay there. So I would imagine a hard part of it is deciding what is and isn't relevant. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, that's it. Marc, back to you. I was just curious to know about how the players reacted to those insights, to those metrics. Any anecdotes, any stories out of this experience in Qatar of any players that discovered the approach, or maybe some others that founded this approach from their club's activity as well?
Yeah, I mean, what I would do before that is if I just elaborate a little bit on the bit that Adam mentioned there in terms of scarcity of data. There's a big difference as well with being in qualifiers and in league compared to a tournament where your data pre-tournament has an impact at the beginning, but by the end of the tournament, if you're lucky enough, as we've been lucky for the last two there, to reach the final stages, then you tend to be looking just at what's happened in the recent tournament matches. As I said, there's 3-4 days between games often, so you don't tend to have an awful lot of time to change huge amounts in the style and approach to matches. So therefore, being able to characterize teams in data sets is far more simple, I guess you could say, and also advantageous to us as well. In terms of the question you said about players, yeah, I mean the ones that I blacked out in terms of the players that were missing the shots, opportunities, they had an intervention put in place for them. That was something that they were exposed to, I suppose you could say. All of the players saw the greater depth of analytics that you saw on the slide there, where we were highlighting the characteristics of a team overall. So that was something that they hadn't been exposed to at the national team for a little while, simply because, as I said, in qualification stages, that data set's not available to us, and that's something that we haven't been able to work on. But the players, they seem to appreciate the information. They certainly took the data on board and would go out of the room talking about what happened, saying, cool, this team's really hard working. For example, before the Canada game, we put up our fitness data from the first match compared against Canada's. We slightly fudged it, I guess you could say, because we played in the middle of the day heat of Qatar and Canada played later on that evening, but there was huge differences in the data. So we were able to say that, this is something we need to prepare ourselves for mentally as well as physically. And the players then took that on board, and immediately the next training session was double the sort of amount of effort put in, and the standards immediately rose from there on in throughout the rest of the tournament. So there was bits of that where the players definitely took on the data and definitely were very interested in things. Regularly asking me to send over the reports. They wanted to check everything themselves as well. So we had a PDF report produced by SportsDynamics, and that was something I was able to then share to the players very quickly and say, here's something for you. And then we were able to individualize any response as well. So if they were asking for something in terms of, for example, passes into the final, into the danger zone, we were able to go through that with them and say that you're actually ranked, I don't know, third this match over. Therefore, it's something that you can look at for the next match to be first, or here's some examples of where those passes were, and this is why you could have done something better or missed opportunity to make that pass as well, which was something that I really enjoyed doing and spent a bit of time working with some of the players on.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And as we talk, I see familiar face of Nathan from SportsDynamics also being part of the call. And thanks, Nathan, for setting up this great panel for Tiki Data Days number 3. Any questions from our very prestigious lineup of guests, maybe from Sam or Nicholas? I would be curious to know from you. You are a familiar user of SportsDynamics on a day-to-day almost work with the clubs. How different is for you, as Marc was mentioning, and Adam as well was mentioning it, from a national team usage where it's really on a very short time period, very crucial 3-4 weeks of competition, where the players don't have necessarily the common usage of those metrics. How is it different? How do you experience that difference? What comes to your mind in relation to this topic?
Well, from my point of view, the automated XML file is a huge time saver. Having everything translated into your style of play, into your game philosophy, it's just beneficial. You don't have to do it by hand with the data that you're being provided by the league or the other competitions. So I believe that's different, and also the amount of data that is available. I believe for most of the KPIs, it's important to have a solid sample size in order to make things comparable. So I believe also that in a league we play against each other, but on national team Like Croatia, they faced Japan in the first knockout stage, who faced Germany, Spain, and Costa Rica in the group stage. Whereas Croatia, they faced Morocco, Belgium, and Canada. So that's different. That's not as comparable as, for example, we can compare our data against all the other teams in the league. However, in terms of characterizing a team, that's one thing that you can do without or with having a comparable data set, I guess. So that's also what my question was, that I didn't ask because Marc already responded to it, how they work with the different data samples and sample size by just characterizing the opponents.
Marc, maybe you wanna comment on that specific point raised by Nicholas?
Yeah, sure. You're exactly right in terms of the opposition will define a lot of what happens in tournament football, the same way that it will in a league as well. So within that, you'll find the teams that are normally heading towards the bottom of the table, I guess you could say, would have certain characteristics compared to the teams at the top of the table. And that's something that we took into the tournament football as well, to try and characterize what are the top teams doing, and can we emulate what we're doing, and does that compare to the top teams as well? So on one of the graphics you saw passes into the danger zone, Germany were the top team for that. I think they had 89 or something like that per game, which is again characterized by the fact of who they were playing against. Despite the fact they didn't qualify through, they had sheer dominance of possession and chances and shots available as well. So they were also top of the potential shots that weren't taken. So, you know, there's characteristics within that you have to bear with when you're looking at tournament data, as with any international stages. So we're actually looking at the moment how we can bring this sort of data set into our qualification stages, and how we can then use that to be able to, as Adam said, benchmark. That'll be something that we'll be able to look at doing in the future, hopefully. But you need to build up a data set over a period of time to be able to do that, as you're rightly saying. With the leagues, you have that. But in international football, we don't always get that. I mean, we've played France, I think, 4 times over the last few years. And, you know, we have a pretty good idea of how we play against France and how France play against us. But you're right, against Japan, that was the first time we played them in a very long time. So therefore, you don't really quite have a data set that you can go, right, okay, that's what they're going to do against this style. And that's what we were trying to do with the characterization of saying that this is what they're building and this is what they're trying to do. That's their way of playing. And as I said, in international football, you don't really get a chance to change it, especially in a tournament. You don't see teams changing from about 3 to about 4 to about 5 regularly throughout the tournament. It does happen, but it's not a regular occurrence, and you tend to find there's a lack of fluidity in the teams that have done that. Does that cover that on?
Well,
cool.
That sounds interesting, though, Marc. What you're mentioning, the lack of those metrics and data on the qualifying session. So I think that for Nathan and Arnaud and Vincent, the 2 founders of SportsDynamics, good message for them. They should be thinking about the specific service for the qualifying stage there as well. But it's a great sign of the interest that you had from using SportsDynamics at the World Cup. To Lovik, Daniel, and Marius, maybe any questions on your perspective on this specific experience and the presentation that Marc made to us?
Yeah, I have one. How interested was the coach of the national team about all those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So he's actually one of the coaches in Croatia who took on data analysis, took on GPS, took on tracking data earlier than other coaches in the region. Not to say he was the first, but he certainly took it on earlier, and he saw the advantages in doing that. We've worked together, myself and Zlatko worked together since January 2015. So we've got a good understanding of the data sets that he's interested in. I don't overload him with too much. he does get the PDF reports through, and he'll pick out something that I've probably not even noticed on page 52 or something like that. You know, he's going through everything, and he's able to find the little bits of data that are appropriate to what he wants to have his message on as well. So he's very interested in that, and he's always checking things as well and going through, making sure that he's up to date with what we're looking at and how we're using it and how we're operating. So yeah, I've been lucky enough that we've established that over time. When I first met him in 2015, I think it's fair to say that I didn't know what he wanted, and he certainly didn't know what I was trying to provide. And we've just established that over time, just communication, me listening to what he likes, me listening to how his philosophy is and what would be beneficial for taking that on to help him improve. So that was where we created with the SportsDynamics the particulars of what we wanted to see in our reports, as well as what we wanted to see on the XML. So as Nicholas rightly said, having that XML was a huge time saver. Going through the opposition reports, I don't know if you saw in the slide there, there's a section that I had just build up, progression, final third play, and I think fast transitions was another one. So then I would go through games, and if there's something I thought, oh, hang on, have I missed that? And I can go back through those clips really quickly and find everything exactly where I thought it would be without having to watch hours and hours of footage. So that was something that we designed, they made, and it was correct for what we wanted to see. So, you know, that would be something that I would say was really, really beneficial for him, as well as the data set, being able to match it to the video as well to say, okay, when you ask me a question on how many passes into the space between the lines was there that we missed, well, we can actually show the evidence of that in the video form. And then with the pitch control video, we can then also highlight that to say, look, here is the exact moments that you can see where that pass could go in and why that should have been made, or how that could be made, for example. So that would be something that helps to establish that, but also knowing and speaking to him on what he wants. That.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, Mark, you're raising there is about this this advantage and this characteristic that you liked about XML files to have this instantaneous correspondence to video, correspondence sequences of video. And I was curious to know about all our guests on the table today. How much is relevant for you as well in your everyday's analysis to have this this association of the specifics and the usage of XML files to the good video sequence? Maybe Adam?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think it's really useful, both if you're looking at yourself and the opponent, because I would imagine, especially in tournament football, let's say it's your final group game, you think you're going to go through, but you don't know who you're going to get drawn against next. It's quite hard to turn around the level of detail you'd want on the opponent if you've got to prep for multiple teams, especially if Mark was saying that their analyst team was quite small. They potentially can't look at every other team in the tournament. So being able to have a XML that you can just throw on a game footage and it highlights the bits you want without having to maybe watch several games in full really speeds up the process. We certainly use that to help us turn around large amounts of games in short periods of time.
Thanks, Adam. I was curious to know, and maybe Daniel and Marius, you having experience in working with youth teams, just to get your insights, how much the younger generation is, in terms of players I'm talking, are they curious and interested into their own data and metrics compared to, let's say, older players? Do you see a significant difference in younger players really being into and getting to better understand their personal and collective performances by looking at metrics?
Yeah, may I start? In my opinion, the young generation has a strong desire for data because they question a lot and they always want to know the reasons of different parameters and data. And I think with the data, you can create an incentive for the young players to set a benchmark within the club on the certain position of a player. For example, the center back, you can show him the data of the player for the first team, and you can create an incentive and say, okay, if you reach the data or the level like the player in the first team, then you have the chance to get a professional player at our club, and maybe and hopefully in some bigger clubs too.
Marius, maybe from your side?
Yeah, for me, it's that the data is used for individualized development of the young player. We want to be in the first team. We play, we take a center back, say Daniel, and we show in the top of the club what is used or what he do for to be here, or another team corresponding according of his capacities.
Thank you, Marius. And by the way, just for your information, and thank you, Nathan, for that, is that Sam Green from LA Galaxy has just slightly dropped off the call. We hope to have him back before the end of the session. But Nathan, I would like to address to you because I know there are questions from the chat, from the people who are attending this Tiki Data Days number 3. So maybe can you report some of the questions coming from the chat, Nathan?
Yes, so you guys can't see the questions. So Marc, I'm going to read it for you. It's from Matthias Maura, the first team analyst at FC Amen in the Netherlands. He asks you, in the Croatian selection, there are top players, for example, Modric, with experience in the best clubs of the world. What are they used to in their clubs? What are their habits? What are the differences with the national teams? So it's a lot of questions and it's not over, but you can pick the one you prefer. How is SportsDynamics different? Do you have those kind of discussion, feedback from the players? Do you use XML for the stuff only on a global view of the team's performance, or does it also have a role on individual evaluation? Thanks, Mike. Just pick a question and tell me if I have to repeat some of them.
Yeah, I was noting down bits there. I got what the players used to in the clubs and their habits compared to the national team. If I start with that, and then I'll come back to the other bits if that's all right. So yeah, I regularly ask the players, what do they receive in the clubs? What do they need? What can we support them with? Individualized analysis of opposition players is a big part of that. So can I see what the opposition guy is like that I'm going to face? And we just want 4 minutes of in and out of possession. If there's anything in data sets that I can highlight and show, then I will. But I don't tend to sit there with a big graph in front of the players and say, look, here's something that I think would be interesting for you to see compared to da 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 da. It's very short, sharp, to the point, what they need to make the best of their performance. So I make sure that we try our best in the national team. As Adam said, we are a smaller national team. We're a very small staff compared to a lot of the national teams out there. And we try our best to make sure that we match what they receive in a club as best as we can. Obviously, that can't be on every level because, as you know, in large clubs, there's a lot of analysis provided through different people and large departments. So we do everything we can to do that. In terms of habits, certain players will want to watch back the match. Some players want to watch the opposition. Some players want to see the data. And it tends to be entirely based on the individual. So I can't say, for example, Luka Modric would sit down and he'll watch back the full 90 minutes of our game, whereas someone else in the team might not. They prefer to say, okay, send me over the PDF report and I'll go through the data and check what I want to see on that. So we have different characters in the team, and we just try to make sure that we can accommodate what their requirements are to make sure that they have the best available for themselves. I mean, there's some players that have additional support from outside of the national team, in terms of they might have a access to a platform, and then they can check things themselves. They might go through a video that they've received through external. What we would prefer is that we can speak to them about that and that's often the case that we can just go back and double check, have you seen this? What do you think on that? And it's all constant sort of, as I said at the beginning, we're a togetherness, and we're sort of inclusive of everyone. So everyone gets an opinion and gets to discuss things. So we try to make sure that there's never sort of a moment where we shut anything away and say, no, don't do that, don't do this. But we do try and encourage people to inquire, to check things, to try and work for the collective good of the team as well. I missed the rest of those bits. Question. Sorry, Nathan. Do you have them? Sorry.
Yeah, there was, as a matter of fact, plenty of questions there from the chat. But I think it's very interesting, and I was just watching and conscious of time. I know that in Qatar we have very long stoppage times, but let's try to stick to timings. We are almost at the 44th minute, and just maybe before closing up this Tiki Data Days number 3, if you had Marc and everybody else in this around this table, if you had to dream of the next level of metrics that you would be like to get and looking at, what would that be?
Okay. So the next level of metrics. I mean, at the moment, I think we can make more of what I'm seeing in terms of SportsDynamics. We used the potential shots one as the example in this presentation today, but there's definitely more that we can do with that, I think, to help progress and develop players, even in educational purposes, like you were talking earlier about the young players coming into the to the senior squads. Being able to analyze young players with that sort of level of data to be able to say, okay, here's some areas. For example, you could have made this pass between the lines, you could have made this penetrative pass that you didn't. And then we can use that as ways to examine things in more depth. So being able to see potential within the team play, as well as being able to see the outcome, I think that's a very big part of what we're seeing at the moment. And I think that's very, very interesting for moving forwards.
Thank you, Marc. And I go to Nathan. I don't know if there's any other question from the chat you may want to take before we end this very interesting session, Nathan.
So I don't think so. I don't have access myself, but my colleagues are telling me that should be fine. I think Matthias' question was the last one.
Excellent. So, well, first of all, a big thank to all of you. It was a very interesting 45 minutes. Thank you, Marc, for all your insights. It's I think that it's been great experiencing and sharing your journey to the World Cup. Wishing you much more with the Croatian national team, and also I think there's also some interesting step forward that you were also addressing. Any final word from our panelists today before we whistle the end of this half of Tiki Data Days number 3? Well then, gentlemen, it's been a real pleasure. It's episode 3 of Tiki Data Days. Thank you, Marc, for this one. There will be more to come, more interactive sessions to talk about how football can improve thanks to metrics and data. Meanwhile, I wish all of you a very nice end of the season for your clubs. And for our colleagues over at the MLS, good start of the MLS for our LA Galaxy colleague as well. And wish you all the best. Thank you for joining, and see you soon for another Tiki Data Days. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much, guys. Goodbye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Yes, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.